One. Hello, divine, beautiful souls. This is Energy Speaks Podcast with your host, Katriel. This season, we are actually talking about the Zodiac Energy Empowerment Series. And I'm introducing each of the practitioners who are a part of this journey with us. And we're at Gemini Energy. So I am introducing Carrie Trubenbach, also known as Wisdom in Spiritual Circles. How are you today? You are a returning guest, and this is our third podcast together.
Thank you so much for having me again. Really, this is
Thank
wonderful. It's a
you.
wonderful opportunity to reach people and to connect with you because I don't get to do that often enough.
Yeah, it, you know, so Carrie Wisdom is such an incredible being. She's a musician. She's a psychotherapist. She's starting a retreat center in what is it? What area? Crystal River?
In Crystal River in Florida, Crystal River, Citrus County.
And she's traveled the world, been to many countries, knows several languages. I mean, we went to Shasta together. We have an entire podcast about our adventures through Shasta. She is incredible. Like, where do we start is the
Thank you.
question. I will say,
wow, when I listen to you,
Mhm.
go
There's a
ahead.
little bit of a lag. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So oh my goodness. I had a project last year with you introducing your music to the world. Um and it was such an incredible process. Because what we really got to do is take time with the photos from your journeys around the world and integrate them to your music, like pair them to your music on YouTube. And just the music itself um is so inspiring. I was wondering if you could share a little bit with us of the music side of you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sure. That's really, yeah, I hadn't expected that. Um,
In the
well,
moment.
I picked up guitar for the first, it's okay. I'm ready. Um, yeah, when I lived in Brazil, I was 17 years old. I moved down to Brazil as an exchange student for, I was there for over a year. And I picked up a guitar. Um, and I started playing guitar by ear down in Brazil. What's interesting is that my mother was a piano teacher and she was a organist and choir director. And so she even had her own radio show in Manhattan, um, piano radio hour on W something, one of those W's in the New York area. Um, and, but as a child, so she would have me practice on the piano, but I hadn't developed an interest in playing piano yet. It was just something that was expected. And so I learned to play by ear the piano because instead of learning the notes and reading music, I would hear it and I'd memorize it by ear and I would play it by ear. So I never learned really how to read music on the piano. So there's only so far you can go without, when you're cheating that way, just playing by memorization rather than reading. So when I picked up the guitar, I felt like, okay, this is mine. No one can tell me how to do this, you know? And so I just started creating songs on the guitar. And that's how I learned the guitar, was creating songs. I'd find a position on the guitar and I love the sound because auditorily it would just be real pretty to me and I would just follow that. So I started writing music. And at first, when I was writing music, I was writing more like more activist music, more about like the liberation of lesbian and gay love, to be, you know, writing music for lesbian and gay people. And then I moved into spirituality, and then it became all about just spirit and love and the spiritual qualities. So surrendering, you know, it was really, the music is about my journey into my spiritual transformation and learning. And so I started playing at temples and spiritual centers in California and some outside of California. And they would have me come in and play my music, and I was paid for that. And I just loved it. So I did it out of love. I never planned to necessarily make a full-time career with it. I don't think I had enough confidence at the time to do that. And I was quite content to just go to different places and play and connect with people spiritually through the music.
Wow.
So that's my story.
You know, well, I have a couple questions because uh essentially you spoke about how you learned the piano by ear, and like, did you ever equivalent that to like your spiritual senses?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because way before anybody else was doing it, I started doing my therapy with clients online. And I started before Zoom, I started with the phone. And what I found was that I had an auditory gift, that I could actually even better perceive someone's emotions and where they were at by not seeing them. Because
Makes
when
a
you
lot.
just listen to what someone's saying, you hear their all the cadence, the voice comes through pure as what's really going on inside.
Mm,
So you can't mask sadness. Even if you put a smile on your face, you can distract someone from seeing the sadness with a smile if someone is visually oriented. So they'll see the smile and they'll say, oh, person's happy. But that's not what I pick up on.
mm.
I pick up on what they say, not what they appear as. And so what I found was that I was able to do really good therapy, just as, if not better, on the phone than in person, because I didn't have all the distractions that
Mm.
people give you when they're not ready to go deeper.
I love
So
that.
we can get distracted with their distraction. Yeah. So yeah, I ended up having an auditory gift that I didn't realize I had, but I didn't realize I had it not through music. I never saw it as through music, because I always felt that I was cheating because I didn't learn the sheet music. I was cheating, right? Because
Yeah.
I picked up my mother's belief system. She doesn't understand how I can do music with my ear without reading. She doesn't understand that. And so I thought, well, I guess because she's she's the professional. So I didn't realize I had this gift until I was using it in therapy,
You know, it's interesting.
because I can
I
pick
can,
up on stuff I'm not even talking about. But go ahead.
oh, sorry. No, I can definitely relate. When I was singing in the choir at my temple, at my synagogue, um, I noticed that it was more difficult for me to have something in front of my face, like the sheet music. I didn't want to go there. It took me away from my connection. And when I would just like just
Yes.
listen, it would take me to a completely different world, and I could harmonize better. I wouldn't be in my head.
Right. Amen, brother. That's exactly what would happen. As soon as my mother would try to teach me about music, I would go into my head and it wouldn't be fun anymore. It just,
Wow.
it wouldn't be fun. There's no creativity in it. It became all mental. And for me, the creativity in music, what really turned me on was exploring the different sounds and then putting words to the feelings of those sounds and
Hmm.
doing it all organically. As soon as I go into my head with music, I no longer enjoy music. So it's just not the way that I do music. And I can
Hmm.
appreciate, it's we all need, and this is the beauty of it. We all need to recognize our uniqueness. And back when I was growing up, it was about everybody being the same. There was a lot of pressure for everybody to be the same. This was post World War II. It was in the 60s. We were all supposed to be the same. And anyway, I love what's going on now, where I really I feel the difference, that people are becoming more tolerant for differences and less fear-based around people being different from themselves. And
Yeah.
that's such a wonderful thing, because when you look at the diversity of nature, you see godly diversity. We're trying to like humanly just make everybody into the sameness so we could control them all, or so we could all be controlled. That's why I think it was going on. I mean, that's my belief, that it was a control issue. But now that we're all coming out of wherever we've been and rising up and evolving and growing and changing, and there's a tolerance for differences now that was never there before. It's beautiful.
I love that. Like, as I think about the planetaries, we just had, you know, Pluto, the planet of transformation, come into Aquarius, and Aquarius is the unique one. It really is the unique energy. There's not like, you're not supposed to be the same. And I think as a world, um, we are creating that uniqueness. And it's beautiful to see, because I feel like, even though it's Aquarius is all about one heart, it doesn't lack the individuality. And we still need to remember to always be our unique self. I remember being in high school, and you know how they had the senior superlatives, and you would get like, Jacob, the leader of the class, or like, um Bonnie, the beautiful one, or I got unique. And I was like, are you telling me I'm weird? And then,
Yeah,
you know what?
right. That's right. That's right. Right.
And then I actually was thinking about this yesterday, how absolutely, like, I'm so excited the fact that I got unique, because I've always been someone who always took whatever path guided me, you know? And I'm very grateful for having that spirit inside of myself, because you know for what we're about to create together in this world, or as we are creating, I should say, we need that uniqueness, um everybody's uniqueness. And uh
Yeah.
and also, I'm learning, I will say, from the Gemini energy right now. So the Gemini teacher is a Gemini. Not every class is set up that way, but but I will say, you just expressed to me, um, you know, a different side that I haven't really thought about before. When I think about Gemini, I think about thoughts, communication, um, talkative, uh, ideas. But the missing piece for me that I completely overlooked, that was so important, is the listening. Because the
Mm.
twins, the Gemini, yes, it does talk. The other one has to listen. The other one talks. The other one has to listen. It's a key receiving piece. So I want to say thank
That's
you
right. That's right.
for highlighting that so organically.
Mm,
And on that note, I also
yeah.
wanted to go a little bit deeper into your life as a psychotherapist.
Ah, okay. Yeah, well, um, let me just say that in this new time that I look back now and I see how archaic the educational system has been, including in the field of psychology. When I went to a Jungian institute, which at least incorporated mind, body, spirit, because in traditional, or if you went into transformational psychology, that's another one. But the majority of people that go into therapy, that go to state school systems, the universities, they are being taught in very archaic ways. Still the Freudian mind and body, but leave the spirit out because we don't want to talk about God in a session. Or whatever that is, or universe or source. I use the word God, but I know a lot of people aren't comfortable with it, and I'm okay using banana if that's what your source is, or whatever, where you get your strength. I don't really care what word you use, whatever you want to call it. And I understand that for a lot of people, the word God used by churches has just turned them off to that word. Totally, tripping, the shame, all of that. And I'm good. I'm flexible. I can switch, from God to source to universe to anywhere. Energy speaks. God speaks, energy speaks.
Amen.
So anyway, I was taught the traditional way, but in undergraduate, but then in graduate school, Jung was, again, had more of a spiritual component allowance in his practice. And it was the first time that a psychoanalyst was introducing the idea that spirit is part of what we are. So I was fortunate that way. Most therapy, I feel, it's more of, I guess the therapy that most aligned with me was cognitive therapy, because you change your thinking, you change your life. Our thinking is what we end up perceiving. So if we think a certain way, if we think negatively, we're going to perceive life in a negative way. So whatever we think about, we bring about.
Great.
And so for me, it ends up more in a spiritual realm. Most of what I do now is not traditional psychology at all. It's really based in spirit, because there are universal laws governing the universe, is plural, that if we understand them and we understand what those laws are, those principles, they're never in the particular. And what I mean by that is that it never just happens in one area. So if I'm experiencing lack and limitation, we think of that in terms of money, but no. When we're in lack and limitation, we've slipped back into that, an old belief on lack and limitation. We literally slip back into it, and it's in every area of our life. It's not just monetary. It's like there's not enough time, there's not enough money, there's not enough of me. I'm not enough. There's even the I'm not enoughness. That's the big one. That's the biggest one of all. So for me, you can't start to do any healing as a therapist from an egoic place. And the mind represents ego, and it represents male energy, represents. So, and the heart represents female, and but it really doesn't matter. What matters is that the ego is a mind tool, mind mechanism. The machinations of the ego work through the mind, they don't work through the heart. Compassion works through the heart. Truth works through the heart. So as a therapist, to stay in the mind and just tell people process their trauma, to me, unless you're going to actually help them to release it and empty out an old belief and allow a new belief to come in, replacing it immediately, the old belief will boomerang right back in. So if you feel like you're stuck, and no matter how hard you try, you're still stuck, it's because you haven't replaced it. You can't empty the cup out without filling it up with something else. Otherwise, the old belief goes rushing back in. The old water goes rushing back in.
Truth.
So cognitive therapy, which is what I utilize, but it's really mixed with the spiritual principles. And that's when I saw, by the way, that's when I saw real change. And I'm talking about miraculous change. I'm talking about this year alone, they were so disabled with depression and other things that they couldn't even work anymore. And in 3 months, they were back to work. It really works when you work with spirit, because if you're trying to teach self-love and all you're teaching is the ego, then all you're doing is strengthening the ego. You cannot find self-love through the ego, because the ego is not about love. The ego is about illusion. The ego is the part of us that basically beats us up, and the self-criticism, all of that, that's the ego. Shame, guilt, that's always of the ego. That's never of spirit. So in order to learn about self-love, which is what we are all seeking in therapy, to get rid of the suffering and the pain, and to be able to get to a place of joy, which we can only get through self-love. So we have to find out who that self is. If you're trying to love the ego, it's not going to go anywhere. You're going to be in therapy and you're going to say, why isn't anything changing? It's because you're trying to get your ego to love you. The ego, that's not the ego's job. Once you understand your spirit having a human experience, then you can love through spirit. But the brain is not about love. The brain is a CPU unit. Its job, just like any organ, is already programmed. Its job is not to love. It's a problem solver. The heart is the place of love. And that's where spirit communicates. And that's where compassion is. So we have to get out of our head and go into our heart, which is completely opposite the way we've all been raised. Completely opposite. So when I go to think, I literally have to bring my thoughts down into my heart space and start breathing, stop the thinking, and allow the communication from spirit to enter into that space. And then it will go up to the brain. So we communicate through the heart to the brain rather than through the brain to the heart. So that's the therapy I do now.
I love that. And you mentioned something. So I was actually a psychology student. I went to St. Petersburg College. I had a beautiful experience. It saved my life, like going that path. And the teacher that I had was a very spiritual woman. And even though we were being taught, like biopsychosocial, and she had to teach on that because she was part of the public school system, essentially. She still, like, always added that piece of spirituality in there, slightly, ever so slight. And And I feel like that's what actually changed and shifted a lot for me. I mean, I've always been a very spiritual person, so I don't feel like I would have received any of that information very well if I didn't have some of that component there. And but when I got into university, I did my 2 years and got into University of South Florida. They did not do that. It was like a whole different world. I said, did I just walk into a psychology like program that like is like night and day? And I didn't connect with that. I was like, can I do Spanish instead? Like it was the most like ridiculous thing because I was like, I feel like I'm fighting my being with what they were teaching. And it was almost like I felt like oh, my soul was being split in a way. I actually got more out of
Yeah.
criminology class. But
Yeah.
you know, it and that's the thing is like also with that, it's like know who your teachers are and and be mindful of that because you know, I was put into a situation at my other school, you know, at St. Pete College to recognize that this feels right and this other path does not feel right in. And so
Hmm.
I decided to take that, you know, still take everything that I learned and and do it in a way that connected deeper and connected to source, connected to God, you know? And because like we have that holy spark inside of us, how could we even think we could, I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm really glad you addressed the, you know, what's going on in the educational system. And I'm setting the intention that we awaken to that so that we can shift and change and come into
Yes.
the heart, that heart into the brain. Uh, like it's such a
Yep.
important piece.
It
You
is. It's
know,
very important.
yeah. And I wish
It's the way that we connect.
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You finish.
Oh,
No, you.
what I
No,
was gonna
you.
what I was gonna say is I had no idea about the Jungian Institute. Um I if I'd have known about, you know, something like that, I think it would have like completely changed my outlook on so many things. So I'm so glad they have
Yeah.
that um like because I really do feel like that is the way things are going, you know, moving forward.
Ab-
We we cannot
Yeah.
survive in society without going higher. We're 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 in these revolutionary energies of going to the next frequency. That
Yes.
that other stuff is like the bottom lower chakras that is not even trying to connect to the heart, you know?
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Please go on with what you're going to say.
Oh, I was just thinking, well, it's just that, okay, so the state universities, the big guys, then the Yales and for they're about research.
Hmm,
And so it's a lot more of it's more of a science approach rather than a human approach.
hmm,
Um, so the private schools, for those that are interested in psychology, in terms of helping people to um, integrate, because we've all had trauma. We are all going through this change from old beliefs into new beliefs. It's going to require integration from all of us, regardless of where we're at.
yeah.
And that integration piece is not going to be something that a research, that kind of psychology is going to be helpful to people. It might be helpful to the scientists, but the kind of therapy that really reaches people is a kind of psychology, I believe, that creates connection through compassion.
Agreed. Although I will say this, I feel like we need to start thinking outside the box and
Yeah.
change the science. We need to start asking better questions. We need to start doing different types of
Yes.
research because now here's an interesting little thing that happened to me. I went to soul school, with Alasa, connected with like past life regression, different things like that. Now, at that, I had I don't go to a therapist anymore, but I had for a very, very long time. I did 10 years with the same therapist, and then we got to a point where we're
Wow.
both growing. And I didn't necessarily I outgrew my therapist essentially. And she outgrew me. Like
That,
she moved to
that's fair.
Colorado. And then it was and that's if you're doing therapy right, that's a good thing. And it took me 10 years though.
Right.
I'm judging, sorry. But but then I got to a place
No,
where
let
things
me
got
just
really.
tell you one thing, one thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
10 years is pretty good. Okay. It's good because, no, seriously, I'm serious. Because
Yeah.
most people, they quit before they even get there.
Mm,
A lot of people quit before they even get there. The point is that time is a human construct anyway. It
mm,
doesn't really matter how long it takes you. The only thing that matters is that you wanted to heal and get to a place where you could grow past where you were, and you got there. That's the only
yeah,
thing that matters. This time element that we use against each other, against ourselves, you're taking too long, that kind
yeah,
of stuff. It's just more negative pressure on ourselves because
yeah.
we want to go as fast as the slowest part of us needs to go. We want to
Mm,
go as fast as the slowest part of us needs to go.
I love that.
Right?
Thank you.
So it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
You did
I'm glad I said it because I feel like myself needed to hear that, and anyone else who's listening right now. And so, coming from that like 10 years of really deep work, I mean, God, we'd be here for hours talking about that. Years actually, because but I got to the point where everything was a little bit more sped up, right? Of course, quantum healing with lots of, and I also was going through a divorce at the same time. And then I
okay.
got to a point where I was like, you know what? I actually do need a therapist right now. I just need to talk out my thoughts and sit down and shift some stuff. Well, I went for about a year, and then about probably a year and a half in, I was almost like, I feel like I'm outgrowing my therapist again. Like there's something that's not necessarily quite working. But then out of nowhere, I happened to be like, she said something like EMDR. And I was like, what's that? And so I I said, like I asked her about it, and she said, this is like, you go into this kind of trance thing based off of a light bar. I guess they do it in different ways now, but it's an rapid eye movement, kind of hypnotic.
That's right.
And And
Right.
what was really interesting is I started doing this therapy because that is actually what I really need. That was the tool I needed at that point in time. And I was so grateful that I got to the point of, I need more. I need something different. I was acknowledging that. And I started to ask the right questions. And when I was in a therapy session, the reason I got into this particular thing is because of this moment. Started doing the therapy, and I'm going back into a past event that actually led me to a past life regression. Now, my therapist had never done a past life regression ever before. Okay. But she held space for one as I was going through this EMDR treatment. And the event, I have a very strange
Oh,
memory. I can even remember things when I was a baby. It's like an energy for me that I can see myself out, like see my soul essentially, and witness my human experience. And so I don't talk about this a lot, but this is probably the first time I'm ever saying this publicly. I was able to hone in what was connected to that traumatizing um, event when I was a baby and what that was connected to in a past life.
wow.
And she was like,
Whoa.
what just happened? And I was like, because I was going through soul school, somehow I was able to be able to go there. And this is what I'm talking about
Mm,
with research is we need to start looking at different types of research because we're starting to go as a society deeper and deeper as we're learning these different quantum tools that have, where
mm.
they've always been here, but we're now tapping into them. And so when we
Right.
start
That's
tracking the research on this, I feel like we're going to see a whole new world. Like the science can actually assist us in this. We just have to get on the same page.
It's true. It can be integrated. And, there are a lot of people out there now on YouTube that are doing that are spiritual scientists. They're proving spirituality through science, that they're merging
Right.
finally, the science and is finally catching up with some of the um some of the things that have been put out there. And it's because we're moving from plain physics, which is more of a chemical, mechanical physics, into quantum physics, which is completely different.
Yeah. Now we're
Completely,
connecting with
right?
alchemy.
So yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an amazing time of change. Yeah.
Amazing.
And a lot of, it's amazing. And I think that what's happening now, especially I heard this month, we're going to be getting a lot of downloads, um, light energy downloads that are really helping us all to wake up and help us to integrate, because it's one thing to know this in your head, and it's another thing to feel it and experience it. That's why feelings are sacred. They're sacred gifts. And let me give you an example. What I mean by that is that, take love. Now, love is just pure God source energy. We can't control it. We can't claim it. We can't hold on to it. We can't manufacture it. We can't buy it. We can't sell it. Basically, free gift comes through in us, as us, with us, for us. And when we're loving someone, the truth is that that love of spirit is coming through us and projected onto that person, and we're seeing it as ours, but it isn't. It's pure source energy that we're experiencing. because we never own it. We are it. We are love. It's not what you do. It's not what you become. It's not, we just are. So the only thing we can do is claim it for ourselves. And the more we move away from, you're a sinner, you're bad by nature, and you're a sinner, and we move away from that whole, I call it a whole myth. It's a whole myth in my mind. But when we move away from that and we claim it as who we are, that's completely different in how you're going to walk each step of the way in your life, whenever you're able to maintain that identity as love, rather than all the other identities that we take on, suffering, whatever it is. But the thing is that here's the truth of all this, is that we need to be teaching this to children at a young age. You know, I taught in the university. What's interesting is that I was hired by a Pentecostal university to teach a graduate program in psychology. They just opened up their graduate program in a Pentecostal university, and I was teaching. And by the way, I was never Pentecostal. And at that point, I already, I was no longer a born again Christian or doing that whole thing. But I would bring into the class as often as I could just spiritual truths that were undeniable, whether you're a Christian or Muslim, it didn't matter. You know, it's like thou shalt not kill. I think it's just across the board in every religion. So it doesn't really matter what you are if you're teaching the principles.
Right.
Right.
Values.
But what was really interesting is, yeah, but as long as people feel that they are not enough, meaning they're sinners, they're not enough, it's really hard to rise up to the occasion of like, if we are to be creating peace on earth, then we need to claim peace inside of ourselves, which means that the wars, internal wars that we have going on inside our heads, the battles that we create inside our heads or that are in our heads, maybe not even self-created, they could be ancestral, who knows where some of these thoughts come from. But if we choose to listen to it, it's going to be one thing. If we choose to recognize it, that we are not our thoughts, and we allow ourselves to not judge ourselves, but just release those thoughts as not who we are, we're much more likely to step into that grace, into the love that we are.
Yeah.
And claim it.
Amen.
Than if our identity is one of unworthiness.
Amen.
So,
oh,
yeah.
Go ahead.
And it's hard to do that because these are all beliefs. All beliefs are like, you know, the first 7 years of your life, imagine the first 7 years of your life, you're talking about when you were a baby. The first 7 years of your life, everything that happens to you, you perceive that as truth. You don't have the critical thinking skills yet to question it. So it comes in as truth, straight in. So you're looking around this world, and for 7 years, everything you see that as truth. Now we're being asked to question all that. It's huge. It's huge because that isn't who we are.
Right. And
it's
I
like
agree
turning
with
yourself
you.
inside out in a way. Yeah, it's just phenomenal what we're doing. And
yeah. Oh, there's a little lag. I didn't quite hear on them.
just the bravery. Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about the bravery it takes to come here. When we heard the calling, and those of us who came, there are a lot of people that don't. This is the hardest training ground. This is the hardest school, the most challenging school in the universe is Earth. And
Earth
we chose
school.
to be here because what we learn in one what we learn in one lifetime on the Earth is equivalent to maybe hundreds of lifetimes other places. It is just like fast place. This is the Yale, the Princeton of all the schools, you know. This is it. This is the Harvard of all the schools, of all the planets. And we chose, we signed up for this. Do you see how courageous you would have to be? Right? I mean, I used to tell myself, what were you thinking? Right? What were you thinking?
Oh man. And for those old souls, they're like, we're coming back again. We're gonna do some more growth. We're gonna build a monopoly, an empire here. Again and again. But hopefully out of this journey, we actually, connect with our wisdom, and help tremendous amount of souls here, And yeah, uh, shifting gears a little bit, to frame this a little bit, um, our class is compassionate communication. I would love to share with our listeners and our viewers a little bit more about what exactly are we going to be addressing. And I feel like we spoke about a lot of it, but I want to frame it a little bit, put a little bow on it energetically.
Gotcha. I'll try to make this as pretty as I can.
You know you're good.
With the bow. Right. So, okay. So it's really about it's really learning about what is compassion, because we tend to think of compassion in humanistic terms. And we confuse it with peace. We confuse it with a lot of different feelings. We think if we're being compassionate, we're being sympathetic. That's really not what compassion was spiritually meant as. The terminology that is really more correct is if we take the word apart, and the word passion is with, and passion is with heart. So it's about really connecting through the heart. So we have touched on it, but how do you do it? And certainly the way that we communicate is really important. But it's also, we have to look at what is compassion comprised of, and how do we develop it? Is it something that's innate, or is it something that we have to develop? Is it something that people have different amounts of? Is it something that some people have and others don't? It does appear that the older souls appear to have an easier time with compassion. I think older souls are more, they've been around the block a lot more. And then there are the ancient ones. And when you've been around enough, you start to recognize that suffering, you can't really have compassion without suffering, but they're also not the same. So we all suffer in this life when we come here. Without the suffering, I truly believe we would not have the growth that we have. Suffering has a place, a use for it. It's not just a random experience. It creates growth. But do you have to have suffering to grow? No. So it's a yes and no. It's a lot more complex. You don't need suffering to grow. You can grow because you want to grow. You can grow because you're motivated to have certain capabilities that you know require a shift in frequency and a shift in energy and a shift in, for example, as long as you have the I'm not enough and I'm not worthy, and you have that belief system, it's going to interfere with your abilities to expand, because you could only expand as much as you're able and willing to release those beliefs as they come up. And it doesn't mean this is, I'm not a purist in anything. So it doesn't mean that you have to get this down 100% in order, it's not like that. It's just it's a gradual process. And the more comfortable you are with your own suffering, your greater capacity to connect with people when they're suffering, but connect in them, not in a way of pity, not in a way of, oh, here, let me fix you, let me help you, but in a way that sees past the misery, because God, in his compassion, her compassion, its compassion, never sees misery. Love does not see the misery. Love sees past that. And so there's something about embracing it all, but not staying stuck in it. So it's not embrace the suffering and stay stuck in it. No, it's just embracing it as you would embrace joy or anything else. And as you do that, you move through it and past it. It's what I notice is that people who are not able to contain their own suffering, who are not able to sit with their own suffering, are not able to be with their own suffering, they cannot be with other people's suffering. So it's going to be difficult to experience compassion for others, because you're going to want to shift them out of that suffering as soon as possible so you can be comfortable. And you can see that with people. If you talk about your feelings and what's going on, you will find some can sit there and listen. Like you said, half communication is listening. And compassion requires listening. So you have to build up those listening skills. So there are layers and layers of this, because if you don't develop the listening skills, you really won't be able to go deep or connect. You'll be looking for distractions to get away from the uncomfortableness that comes up in you, because you're not able to contain and be with your own feelings. Feelings are the crux. They are the most important piece of this shift. They are. It's going from the head to the heart. It's going into accepting all feelings without judgment and getting comfortable with that. So when fear comes up, it's so easy to berate ourselves when fear comes up, because we know it's not good for us, blah, 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 blah. But it has to come up when it comes up, and it has to be allowed and looked at and explored and then released. And when you go through that process, it won't swing, it's like a boomerang. It won't boomerang back. Every time we suppress or repress our emotions, what ends up happening is that they just boomerang back on us, or they just stay on a cellular level, and they're impacting you, cause and effect all the time, and you're not even aware of it. So what I do is I try to help people be aware of the feelings, what they mean, how to deal with your feelings. I mean, we should be teaching children how to handle what compassion is from day one, because it's through, we need compassion in order to deal with our suffering. And we're all going to suffer if we come here. So how come we're not teaching our children how to deal with suffering as not as something to run from, but as something to learn how to sit with and just allow, and then it will pass through.
I love that.
Its resistance persists. What we resist persists. So if we resist our discomfort, if we resist any feelings, whether it's fear, whether it's sadness, suffering, it doesn't matter what it is. If we resist it, it's going to persist. So what's the solution? The solution is meeting life on life's terms, not on yours or mine. We cannot control anything past our nose. And when I try to, it's just, I get reminded of what I can't control. The only thing we get to control is what's within.
Yep, that is truth.
And until we do that, we're suffering because we're going to keep trying to get life to be on our terms. I mean, it's a natural thing we want to do as humans. We want to control life. And life is to be
control, but we
lived,
can't,
not to be
or we
controlled.
cannot. Sorry, we can't control, but we can influence. And that's,
Yes.
it's huge, you know? It's like, as I feel like this is going to be a very powerful class because it's really, really delving into what our world really needs right now. And because compassion, as you know, so beautifully put, um, we, it really feels there's a lot of lack of that, you know? And
Yeah.
and so when we can bring opportunities like this to address it, um, I, this whole time, my mentor from the beyond, both of them, keep screaming at me to share something from the Aura Soma in regards to compassion. So I'm just gonna do it because I'm not gonna argue. Real life channeling going on. Um, so from the Aura Soma perspective,
Excellent.
Aura means light, Soma meaning body. So it's essentially color. In the Aura Soma, compassion is connected to the color coral. And the color coral has different colors within that. It has the pink, which is actually red. Red is the groundingness, it's the root, and that the other color that's connected is actually gold. And that gold is our wisdom. So we have the heart and we have the soul. We have literally the love of wisdom. And I feel like you put that so beautifully in there. And if someone really wants to connect with color, you know, we can start wearing these colors more, bringing that into our awareness. Different tricks, you know, and that's a way we can influence, you know, right, and address it. It's all coming through right now, like kind of cool. But you know, it's like
Good. Honor it.
I'm really excited for this class because especially with everything going on, this is a moment. I mean, I was just having a conversation with my dad last night, and you know, every family has difficulties. And and so what I've noticed though is our communication has been better. We're able to share our feelings with each other. That's huge. And so
Yes.
I
That
I
is
said to my
huge.
dad, yeah, like before it was just yelling, screaming. That's it. Like no listening, just output. But now there's this state of awareness of like, all right, I'm not happy, but why am I not? How can I make a list and address these different things with someone else and say, this is my concerns. Like, I feel like I can't take up space, or I feel like I can never go anywhere. Like you speak all those, negative things out there to empty the cup, get it out of your system, right? Rewire it so that because essentially most of the time when you're talking to someone, at least from my experience, they're having the same type of thoughts going on in their head of like all the can'ts and things like that. And you finally get down to what the actual root is. And it's like, oh, okay, so you're having that problem too? Okay, now let's see each other and let's meet in the middle. And then we're not suffering
Right.
anymore.
Right.
So
That's right. You're not,
go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I just thought of a conversation I had with a client yesterday.
Yeah.
And they called up and they were going through this long list of why they were broke up with their partner of 8 years. And they were going through this long list, and I'm thinking, none of these are reasons to break up with somebody. And she was totally unaware. It turned out the reason why she was upset and left, and now they're going to be getting back together. But it was because she was not able to get in touch with her feelings, that after all this time, he still hasn't asked her to marry him. And so she feels like he's not really committed to her. She was so disconnected from that it wasn't until we started talking about it that she realized that behind all this picking at him, when we start picking at somebody, we start looking at, like, he doesn't exercise enough, he doesn't eat right, whatever it is, those are never reasons for breaking. It's always communication, and behind the communication are feelings that have been withheld, feelings that have been not talked about, not dealt with. And so they build up as an energy speaks, and it does. It really does. So that energy just got bigger and bigger, but she didn't understand where it was coming from. And once she understood what it was that she needed from him and wanted, and what was really going on, which was not what she thought, then it just cleared everything up. And she was able to go to him and talk to him about it, which is a beautiful thing. So sometimes, we think we're so in our head about stuff that what's really going on, we can't even get to it without the help of somebody else who can see past it. That's all.
And so
And
I just
because feelings are always,
yeah, yeah. So I just want to say thank you so much. And like, for someone who really wants to go deeper into accessing their emotions and being able to communicate them with your loved ones, with the people around you, and even at a bigger scale, um, please come to the compassionate communication class with Carrie Wisdom Trubenbach. Carrie Trubenbach Wisdom. There we go. Sorry. I don't know. Maybe I'm dyslexic or something. And that class will be on Tuesday, February 27th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Uh, Online, you'll be able to see the different time zones, or you can do the math if you're somewhere else around the world. And I just want to do a quick, little explanation of what the Zodiac Energy Empowerment Series is. So, for someone who may be new listening, the Zodiac Energy Empowerment Series is a um 12-week experience through the Zodiac energies. And how we do that through different activities. And so we're going in a specific order because we're essentially being able to connect with these different energies to co-create with the universe. And each zodiac has its own specialty to it. And so when we connect with it in this order, for instance, where we have been thus far is with Scorpio, setting the sacred space. We start there. We have to set the sacred space in order to transform our lives. And part of that is we have the chaotic energies around here. We have the zero energy, which is the boundary. Boundaries are important to be able to have the sacredness in this space right there. But then we start adding ingredients. The ingredients, love, leading with our heart for Leo. And that, is really important to start with. Then the second ingredient, which is the the soul. It is the feelings. It is the vibration we're creating in this world. And those feelings are vibrations. And they're connected to moon-like energy. So we really connect with the moon for moonology and our empath self, empathy. And then we add in the ingredient of Sagittarius, which is connected to our stories we tell, the belief system, and our allowing ourselves to expand. And then the fourth ingredient is about our uniqueness. It's about shifting our frequency, shaking shift up. And, we have to get outside our comfort zone so we can actually level up for growth. And then we come into this beautiful Gemini
Right.
energy. We finally communicated out to the earth, to the universe, to the ones we love. Because if we didn't have that first, we'd be like just word vomit. And so we're going through this series to build ourselves up and do things in a new way and a sequential way for those who like systems, but also, these are very impactful activities and they're fun. So we're going to have a little fun with this as well and meet new people. So if you're interested, head on over to energyspeaksbycatriel.com. You'll be able to discover two pathways, the online version or the in-person version. And you can come to both or one or the other. Who cares? Like, hey, we can jump in between and have lots of fun. You'll have lots of
Yes.
different beings you can connect with in different ways. And essentially, sorry, my earpiece was going out. We can also track our journey as well. Uh, through the Zodiac Energy Empowerment Series Journal for 2024. And this is a huge tool. This is a tool that you can buy on Amazon for $22, and it has your schedule for all the classes, what the series is all about, and it has questions to directly connect with each class. And yes, we have 7 questions that overlap for every single class because we're connecting them with the chakra system. But then we go a little bit deeper into what we actually experienced. And so I created questions really going into what we're going to be experiencing in this class. And I've been using it thus far. We're about to approach the week of Cancer. So we've just done 2 weeks. And it's been really impactful to put down on paper what's in here. And, I've been lately going through other journals I've had in the past, and I stopped journaling for a good like 2 years. And I noticed how impactful it was to actually journal. And so I'm very grateful to be able to have made this journal, and hopefully it will be a great tool for you at home. And again, on that website, energyspeaksbycatriel.com, you can check out our practitioners, how you can connect with them, and what's your best way of connection.
Well, I guess really I'll leave my email address and my phone number. Those are the two ways. It's C for Carrie and Trubenbach, my last name, Trubenbach @gmail.com. So it's basically first initial of my first name with last name @gmail.com. My telephone number, and that's where it's really the best if you want to have either a session or just call me up and talk to me about anything. The number is 727-953-2250. I also have about 3 acres of land up here in Crystal River, and I'm going to be starting my first retreat in April. So the land will be open for retreats. If you have a group of people that you want to have a retreat on some beautiful land right near Lake Rousseau for kayaking and manatees in Crystal River, whatever. Yeah, it's got a lot going on. Rainbow River's just up the road. So it's really a beautiful place to come.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for having me, by the way. It's been a blast.
this has been amazing,
It is.
and
It's really fun.
I never know what way the direction of our conversation is going to go, but every single time it's such a beautiful journey.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And
Yeah.
I'll have to have you back to talk more about your retreat center. We just didn't have enough time today, but at least we know
Oh,
about
that's
it. And
okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about getting this out to people I know. So yeah, that's going to be fun. Having everybody see this would be great.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for coming on here and taking your time, which is our most valuable tool in this lifetime, and just being here with us and sharing your heart.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, and I want to say thank you, all divine, beautiful souls, for tuning in to Energy Speaks podcast. It doesn't work without others out there listening and sharing this beautiful wisdom that comes on through this sacred space out with others. So if you could hit the share button and bless someone today. And that is today's podcast for Gemini for the Zodiac Energy
Yay.
Empowerment Series. Love you all, divine, beautiful souls. Have a great day.